One, two, three. Hello everyone and welcome to the Mashanddrum Whiskey Room and What's on the Shelf Wednesday. In this series I do quick reviews of whiskeys you could find on the shelf, including bourbons, ryes, Irish whiskeys, and in today's case a very special corn whiskey by popular demand, Mellow Corn. Mellow Corn has been around since 1945. It's a unique kind of straight whiskey that is rarely seen, along with its hokey retro label. As a corn whiskey, it must be at least 81% corn grain in the mash bill and can be aged in new, uncharred, or used charred barrels. So Mellow Corn is a straight corn whiskey which has been aged in used Heaven Hill barrels, since Heaven Hill does make this. Unlike bourbon, which needs to have at least 51% corn in its mash bill and aged in new charred oak barrels, a corn whiskey must contain at least 80% corn in its mash bill and, if aged, can be aged in new uncharred or used oak barrels. Straight corn whiskey is corn whiskey that has been aged for 2 years or more. According to Heaven Hill, Mellow Corn is the only extra-aged bottled and bond corn whiskey available on the market. Now, to be labeled bottled and bond, if you don't know, the whiskey must be a product of one distillation season and one master distiller at a single distillery, aged in a federally bonded warehouse under U.S. government supervision for at least 4 years, and it must be bottled exactly at 100 proof. Additionally, the bottle and bond label must clearly identify the distillery, where it was distilled, and where it was bottled, if different. So Mellow Corn is a corn whiskey I can't get here in Ohio, but whenever I travel and walk into a liquor store that do have it, it's usually always there and I always tend to grab one. Another part of the rise of popularity, like so many other spirits, is the bartenders. The last several years, bartenders have created some amazing cocktails with it, and according to Heaven Hill, they've added 20 new markets across the country since 2010 because of that popularity with bartenders and just a cult following in general. All right, so what's in this beautiful, funky retro bottle? The mash bill is 90% corn and the remaining 10% is rye and malted barley. This is bottled at 100 proof, and the best part is that it's only about 12 bucks. Okay, let's taste this stuff. You gotta love this label. The label is just pure nostalgic heaven right here. I think the label is what probably turns some people off if they do see it. All right, so let's get on the nose here for Mellow Corn. I'm actually getting more vanilla on the nose than I remembered. Usually you do get a big burst of corn sweetness, which obviously it's a corn whiskey. So there is a buttered popcorn aspect to it as well. There's some light caramel, maybe a hint of spice there too. Like a cinnamon or, I don't know, maybe a nutmeg. There's a slight baking spice note in there too that I'm getting. But it's very vanilla. You definitely smell that corn grain. You know what this smells like? It smells like a bowl of Frosted Flakes. Have you ever had Frosted Flakes cereal with Tony the Tiger? That's what's in the glass, man. It's totally Frosted Flakes. Yeah, it's very cereal, very, very sweet. Yeah, the nose is very straightforward. It's what you would expect. You can get a lot of corn sweetness, almost like a fresh corn mash. You get a little bit of spice there, tons of Frosted Flakes in the glass, so it smells really good actually. All right, so let's go for a sip. It's so sweet on the palate. It's I always equate it to buttered popcorn. It does. It's that mix between like buttered popcorn, more of that Frosted Flakes note that you get. A lot of corn, a lot of vanilla. This actually drinks a little lighter than 100 proof to me. It's not really coming in like 100 proof whiskey. Let's go for another sip. It's just a lot of corn sweetness on the front of the palate, but there is a lot of vanilla here. I feel like I am getting a little hint of caramel too. It's very barely there, very light caramel. You know, again, these were, Mellow Corn is aged in charred but used barrels. But there are Heaven Hill barrels, so we know it's coming from a good distillery. But yeah, there's more flavor in here than I remember. So let me go for another sip. Yeah, it's not complex, but that's not a bad thing either. I mean, it is what it is. This is a corn whiskey. You have those vanilla, a lot of buttered popcorn, the Frosted Flakes. It's all there. It doesn't really go anything beyond that, and that's not a bad thing because what you're paying for 12 bucks, there's not a lot of bottles like this on the market, as I mentioned. So, you know, for uniqueness, for flavor, I mean, I think it's an absolute steal. I'm getting another sip of this because I just think it's really good. So a few things about Mellow Corn. Now what's interesting is the revival of corn whiskey or high corn bourbons across the country from craft distilleries. Now while some of those are really good, they can run upwards of $50 or more. Now when you see the hokey retro label of this, the low price and the placement, which is usually on the bottom shelf, I'm sure a lot of people think that it might be just too cheap and not worth your time. Well, it is cheap, but I think it is worth your time. Listen, it's bottled and bond, it's 100 proof, it goes great in cocktails, and is far better than many other whiskeys at this price point. Remember, it's from Heaven Hill, which is a quality distillery. It does enough on the palate to keep things interesting, even though it's not overly complex. It's just really sweet and really delicious. It actually really works great in blends too. So here's a quick thing to try. Do a 50-50 blend of this and Old Grandad 114 if you can. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. It's delicious. So if you see this at a store, don't be scared. For 12 bucks, I'm telling you, give it a go. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for stopping by this week for this episode of What's on the Shelf Wednesday for this review of Mellow Corn corn whiskey. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram and find me on Twitter. Let me know what you think about this one. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time on The Mash and Drum. Take care.